Hey everyone, so my name is Keris and this is the first episode of the Mindful Body Method on YouTube. And this is something that I've been sat with for some time, really wanted to start a while ago, but I also think everything happens when it's meant to. I'm actually a nutritional therapist and personal trainer, also trained in functional medicine and a yoga teacher. Very passionate about health, but so some of you may know me from my company Fit to Food and Keris Nutrition. But the reason that I've set up Mindful Body Method is because for the last 6 years, I've been struggling with some chronic health issues, and I started to step into the Mindbody community here on YouTube. And I was super lucky to find some brilliant teachers and work with them on a one-to-one level. And I'm feeling so much better. So I'm kind of a year into this journey. I've made huge progress. I want to be completely transparent. I still have some symptoms, but many of them have faded. But also many other changes have taken place. In fact, there wouldn't even be this YouTube channel, this video, without the work that I've done, the mind body work that I have done. And I'm going to, on this platform, really bring together some elements of nutrition, obviously kind of movement and exercise, like how does that fit into, how do we make that part of our health without, part of my journey has been discovering how some of these things were kind of coping mechanisms in the end for some difficult experiences that I had in childhood. And I think this is kind of probably more common in the industry, and that many of the people we're following and putting on a pedestal as super healthy and very motivated are actually doing it more through a drive of I have to do this and I have to, be this person because I've had to prove myself from a very young age and I don't want to feel certain things. So I use exercise and having an incredible physique and, really controlling food in a way that may have been deemed healthy, but is maybe borderline orthorexic. And where many of us are kind of following these individuals. I was trained by them. Of course, there is science, and I have a whole curriculum that I was trained in as a nutritionist about how this stuff is helpful. But I think it's become a focus to override and avoid a lot of things. And it's lost its way as an industry as it's been invaded by consumerism. And there's so much selling of tests and supplements and products that we don't need. And it's got really complicated. So I really do want to use this channel to help you understand, firstly, the value of mind body practices. Like, I think these were such a game changer for me. And on the other side of doing this work, you know exactly what to eat. You know how you want to move your body. You develop this adaptability, this flexibility with it all, because it's not a coping mechanism. It's not an override or done to avoid something. So we let go of the control. But also, I think as we're being hit by so many different things in terms of, obviously, as technology changes and we're just being marketed at so much, we need to be able to have this agency of understanding, like, what's truly helpful, what does our body need, and where are we just being sold something, basically to put money in people's pockets. And I made huge progress after 6 years of struggling with digestive issues, mainly upper GI. So it was silent reflux, but I got COVID and then it turned into lower GI and histamine intolerance. And obviously, as a nutritional therapist, I already know all the supplements, all the different dietary interventions. I did 4 microbiome tests, spoke to some of the most qualified people in the world, had some great contacts in the industry. And no, everyone was just like, I don't know, like, I really can't suss this out. I don't know. I did, follow things to the letter because I was so determined to heal. And went down the medical route as well, spoke to 8 gastroenterologists, and eventually just thought, I think I just need time out and a break. I moved abroad to Portugal, where I am now, and took time off work, did a 7-day water fast, like tried everything to the point where I was like, this is not about food. And I knew that. And I knew that to some degree it was stress. But whenever I tried to have different therapies, and I can list hundreds of things that I tried before coming into the mind body space, and actually just doing so much less and turning to meditation, emotional allowing. I'm going to talk more about those in a second. But all the different things that I tried, I kept saying to them, the thing that's stressing me out is this illness. Like, I can't get rid of it. And there's like a double whammy of shame because I'm a nutritional therapist and I can't stop these digestive issues. many of which happened overnight. So I actually could be a relatively normal human being in the day, but and overnight was like, really, really difficult. And I think what was really helpful for me was as I started to do less, insights came. But obviously, I think my journey into the mind body space, if any of you are kind of following some of the great channels on here, I'm going to name those, the people that I worked with in a second. It goes like breadcrumbs to where you need to be. And eventually you realize that you're probably going to do most of the work and you already have everything that you need. And other than every now and then these questions pop up, like, would this supplement help? I've got iron deficiency. Do I need an iron supplement, for example? So this is where I really want to help the mind body space a little bit more. Is there is obviously still this role of nutrition in terms of, as I've said, we resource the body at cellular level with macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fats, micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. But of course, there's also this therapeutic element to nutrition where you're kind of sold these very complex supplement plans or something to fix the microbiome, and they can get very expensive. And I never use them a lot actually in my practice because I very quickly saw that they overwhelmed a client. I was always very nervous. I was like, all this money and they may not even get the desired results. And I was also someone who would redirect clients back towards looking at their stress and their lifestyle. But of course, even with myself, I was like, even if that's a problem, I don't know what to do about it. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere because of X, Y, Z. So how am I ever going to get better if the thing that causes the stress to me is never leaving? Because of course it can be our loved ones, it can be our financial situation, it can be our work, it can be things that we are trapped, with, and that just kind of makes all of your symptoms worse. The things that really helped me, I think, from the mind body space was, first of all, I went into using meditation and gradually from guided meditations to learning proper Chan Zen with Sam Miller, who has the channel The Great Allowing. I also learned huge amounts from her about the nervous system and specifically emotions and the nervous system and emotional allowing. And that was what allowed me to really start to turn. I call myself the tanker because my ego is quite resistant to a lot of this stuff, but really turn it around. I didn't want to do less. I didn't want to slow down. I didn't want to pause. I got meditation as a thing that could help, but it wasn't really moving the symptoms in any way. But when I started emotional allowing, as many of you who follow, if any of you follow Sam Miller, you'll know, you actually feel it. So when you begin the process, you feel the physical sensation of unrepressed emotions moving through the body. And this is the work of Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, even Gabor Mate. They're all talking about difficult experiences, past traumas kind of being stuck in the body in some way. And what the mind is kind of doing is developing all these kind of to some degree like coping mechanisms and trying to find safety, but actually often the overactive mind, the flavor of those thoughts is trying to point back to an emotion that we have not processed and completed. And so when I began these practices with Sam and just watching her videos, understanding things, it all began to make sense. You're able to have much more compassion to yourself as a result of this, because I had actually gone from being super proactive, trying everything, to exhausted and just self-sabotaging, like just sat there eating like large bars of dark chocolate and just having the reflux anyway and not caring anymore. And I say that because I when I did work with some of the practitioners, what was really nice is they completely saw me. I had a session with Simona Irwin and she just was like, I see you, like I get where you are, like of course you're exhausted. And but at the time you're giving yourself so much grief. As I said, I'm a nutritional therapist and I can't even fix myself, with digestive issues. So it's a really powerful process to go through, and there's kind of different components to it. And on this channel, what I'll be sharing to some degree is kind of my story and how I needed a bit of narrative integration. So I needed to see, like, I was so fixated on, I've got a stomach issue and I could fix it externally with this diet or these supplements or this. Obviously, gastros are just suggesting PPIs or nortriptyline, sertraline, and then eventually amitriptyline. And there's a part of me, I tried sertraline and nortriptyline, but with the amitriptyline, my mum takes that. And I was just like, I just can't. I don't think this is going to be the way for me, because I don't think it's addressing what the real issue is. There was just something that I knew. And plus seeing how sluggish and slow it affects my mum and it affects her stomach, it makes it quite unpredictable. I was like, I haven't got capacity for any of that stuff. And I think at the time I was in a bit of a obviously heightened state of anxiety. So I quite like that I could just walk off most of my I guess most of my anxiety. I was just walking it off and I was like, I don't want to have the sluggishness. So I didn't go down that route, but many people do, and I completely understand why. And some people have to be able to get a foundation in place to do this work. But I will be talking a little bit about you're in that moment and you're trying to fix the illness, and you've kind of lost sight of like expanding, as I said, getting some narrative integration. So we might go, yeah, we know stress caused it, or I know I got burnout. I definitely burnt myself out. But looking at, I put some things in place like stopping work, moving abroad, resting, and it didn't have the desired effect. So then I was like, well, it's not stress then, is it? Because I've done all these things and it's not working. And what we know is, as I've said before, that these difficult experiences and the emotions that they are linked with are not only kind of in our body, but there's also to some degree a resistance for us to be able to access some of this stuff. And this is where Sam's emotional allowing and Simona's methods are very, very gentle. They're literally just these mind-body practices that connect us back. We have body minds and we have emotions, core emotions, like primary emotions in our body, like sadness, anger, fear, but also joy. And they are physical and pre-verbal, and they're generated in response to something. But if we don't feel like it's safe in that moment, then obviously it's generated and then it doesn't have anywhere to go. It can't do the thing that we need it to do. Anger is our boundary. Fear helps us kind of act fast to save our life. It makes us very vigilant. Sadness helps us process loss. We'll cry and we'll feel that that pain, and then we can move on. And if we don't allow that to complete, and we're kind of like, resisting, we're locking it back in, this is when we can start to see dysfunction in the nervous system, because obviously the nervous system is intricately linked. The emotions are part of our survival response, as is the nervous system, and they're working together as a team. And we take one half of the team out, the other half has no choice but to upregulate. And again, this is where powerful thing for me to learn in this narrative integration was difficult experiences in my younger years led to hypervigilance, hyperindependence, a drive to perfectionism, people pleasing, goodism, working hard, addiction. But addictions mine were driven towards exercise, eating really healthy, all these kind of control mechanisms, achieving academically, super competitive in lots of different ways, but then also super insecure, like very low self-esteem, could not see. And many people could tell me I was very good at stuff, I could not see it. And so there was just always this driving and striving. And for most of my life, I got diagnosed with IBS when I was in my early 20s, had no menstrual cycle for most of my life. And this is one of the reasons I became a nutritional therapist. And in fact, many people who are in the health industry go in because we have health problems that we solve by eating better, changing our diet, exercising, maybe losing weight if that was your issue. And one thing that we might forget is, of course, there may be some degree to which we were eating terribly, and eating better helps us to feel better. But have we also found a controlling, a coping mechanism that we can now use to override, to control? So I discovered running when I was at university, and I used it every single time. I was going into a kind of deep depression, not wanting to get out of bed. I had a moment where I was like, I think I'd rather step in front of the bus to uni rather than get on it. Super low mood. And running became the thing. I started with a friend just because we wanted to lose some weight, and obviously got endorphins, and it just went from there. And it became my absolute, like, I need to run for decades of my life. And what's interesting is in my 30s, I got double tendonitis where I was running twice a day. So it just, there was never enough of all this stuff. And that's one of the problems with these coping mechanisms. We start to need more and more and more to get the same benefit from them. We're essentially also chasing dopamine to some degree. But that was the most difficult 18 months of my life where I could not run. And I remember thinking, I'm going to have to find other ways. And I did, in terms of going and basically studying really hard. I remember finding like lots of new nutrition courses to do and just throwing myself into those. And you're always losing sight of the need to do what are you trying to escape? What are you what's the feeling that we are avoiding, and why is that there, and why is that hanging around? And I think now we're kind of in a society where we might just say, but it runs in my family, depression, low mood. But some of this is obviously kind of a mixture of cultural and familial conditioning. So we're going to have some things coming down, but also the kind of the emotions that are safe and allowed, and our emotional expression is something that we develop, or we become aware of what's safe and what's not very early in our life. So again, if anger is not done in your household, then you will suppress it. And this is complex, of course, but this bit of narrative integration, as I've said, was really helpful for me. But a couple of other things that were also helpful was, you learn this information. You can learn a lot of this through talking therapies, but you're a bit like, but what? We learn so much about ourselves conceptually, but then we don't really know what to do about it. And we feel like we could never change it because it's so strongly ingrained within us. And so this is where the practical tools that Sam teaches, emotional allowing, and just the education behind it of understanding what you're doing in an emotional allowing session, and that you can do this anytime, anywhere. So once you've got to grips with it, you begin to use it all the time, and you start to experience emotions as they come in. So you can be in a conversation with someone and they say something negative about you, and you can be like, feel that. Whereas, of course, if we were unaware of the point and the necessity of emotions, we would be like, oh, I don't like that feeling. And then we might go into a defensive reaction verbally, but then also a contraction in terms of our physical state. And then we might go off and try and do something about that thing that someone said. Whereas if we can start to allow these things in, not resist them, then it can really start to change everything. From, obviously, we're altering our kind of nervous system. We're able to see things. We have more clarity. We're able to understand things a lot better. And we gradually begin to also, as a result of allowing, I personally, and mindset education, is just begin to open my mind in terms of expand my level of consciousness on this journey as well. And again, I'm really grateful to Sam for highlighting the work of Jack Pansep and Daniel Siegel. As I followed their work, I was like, wow, we really do need to understand that a mind-body connection means we connect with emotions, our heartfelt sense, our gut feeling. We can also make sure we've got left brain and right brain integration, so that we've got emotions on the right side, logical linear stuff on the left. I was very much just in the logical linear phase because, I think after a number of difficult experiences, I found safety in just working and jogging and training and lifting weights and staying in this very rigid routine that was quite compulsive. Sam actually taught me a lot about process addictions, which when I opened my eyes to that, I was like, oh my God, I have so many. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always reading books. I'm always learning. I'm always trying to know more. I'm always moving. I'm always making cups of tea. I just barely stop. I don't stop doing anything. I have to clean cupboards out. I'm cleaning kitchens. I can't go to bed until everything's done. And so you learn about these little things that you've been doing, all about creating safety. And just, if I do all these things, then I'm safe and I'm okay. And it all just stacks up over time in your life. And then we're kind of wondering why we're exhausted and our brain is so busy and it won't stop. So again, just all these educational elements gradually helped me understand what I needed to do, which was create this routine where I can still work, I can still exercise enough not to do something. And what's really important is I prioritize the experiencing and the allowing of emotions and meditation, so that I'm not getting lost in the mind again. So if we have difficult circumstances in our younger years, many of us go neck up and we become these meaning making machines. We're kind of like, everything has to be about words and language and doing. And, we're not very good at that kind of somatic element of feeling and understanding and then pausing and, then being able to respond, and being receptive to stuff, which is really important. So as I go into a routine now, I guard things like meditation time. I guard these emotional allowing sessions. I still eat nutritiously. I'm just back to exercise after a long break because I needed to just feel what's it like to just walk the dog and, not lift weights and not do those things. And now I'm doing the minimal effective dose. And that's mainly because I train with a bunch of people that I really like. I feel I've got energy and capacity to do so. And, and there's an enjoyment factor there for me. That might change. Who knows? The more mind body work, the more I might be like, no, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. But you feel this real draw to, it's a hard yes, I like that. It's a hard no, I'm not going to do that. And this internal compass has really come back online for me. And as I said, this video wouldn't even be here without that process. So this channel is very much going to be a little bit about my journey, the things that I learned, what's been useful, signposting to incredible teachers, bringing together some of the kind of nutrition elements, supplements, exercise, the gut microbiome. I know I've been in many groups. I've hid because nutritionists, naturopaths, and functional medicine practitioners get custard pied in these groups in the mind body space, and I completely understand why. And in their my defense, we have a whole curriculum that we're taught, and it does help people, but I think sometimes it's now getting lost a little bit in as I've said, the kind of money making consumerism element has invaded that space quite heavily. And secondly, I think if you have a lot of difficult experiences, past trauma, current trauma, then it's kind of hard for anything to make a difference. And I think as well, there's this slight distrust that the body knows what to do and the body can rebalance and regulate. And we have to be careful about how much we intervene and we meddle. So it's about making sure that these things that we do are safe and supportive and resourcing, rather than kind of forcing and directing, because the mind will always want to go ahead, and the mind will always be, I want this done yesterday, and this is taking too long, it's not going to work. And we start to fiddle again. And I found that several times on this journey, that I'd be like, I'm going back to this supplement, I'm going to try that supplement, I'm going to do that one again, I'm going to, go and see another practitioner for this. And so you dip in and out, but eventually you're going to find your toolkit. That's really important. And there will be some supplements that might be helpful from just a micronutrient, macronutrient perspective, or iron deficiency, whatever it might be. And there might be practices that help you. But what I would say is that also has to be this time of the emotional allowing, the somatic work, the stillness, the silence, doing less so you can be and you can understand. And then when you're kind of going back, engaging into life, you'll feel a draw and it'll make sense as to what you need to do. But I'm here to basically answer questions. I don't know all the answers. No one does. That's a really interesting thing. I know there's millions of questions that people have around Lyme's and mold and histamine and all these things, but I have observed for a long period of time what's happening in these groups. And obviously we're trained in biomedicine, so I know to some degree, why the histamine is kicking off in various different elements of illness, and what would be helpful to do and supportive, but what would not be overriding. And ultimately, you will decide all of this stuff yourself if mind body if mind body illness is present in you. And I also want to do a little bit more focus on anxiety and health anxiety, because that was for me something that I hadn't even realized was there, because you can be somebody who's so high functioning and doing all the healthy stuff, but it's kind of take all that away. So what if you can't exercise? What if suddenly, we actually had here in Portugal a power cut recently. It was so interesting, a whole country-wide power outage, and everything closed, like no water, nothing. And it was just really powerful what everyone thought about first. And we had one supermarket with a generator and everyone ran in, and just seeing what people brought was interesting, because people were grabbing Diet Coke, and I'm laughing because it was like last thing. I was like, water, we need water. We have a borehole, we're not going to have water. And, what's going to last us for a long period of time. And so I say that, I don't know, that was a slight digression, to be honest, but just thinking about, if we take away, if you haven't got access to all these biohacking supplements, your saunas, your red light therapy, all this stuff, like what's left? And do you trust your body? At the end of the day, can it, because I really believe that most of us need to be doing less and returning to really simple things and the basics of nutrition and food that we've been eating for hundreds of years. And you'll know what you want to eat if you're doing this work and you back off. And, it's become so tribal nutrition. It's like the keto, the carnivores, the vegan, it gets very tribal and everyone's just fighting, and it doesn't help anybody. But also because you're doing this inner work, you will know what you want to eat. That will become quite apparent. There's been so much noise you've been led to believe, and obviously there's so much. I think what's really difficult with nutrition is it's so intertwined with appearance, and when people talk about anti-aging and longevity, they're also talking about fear of, I don't want this condition, this disease, this state in future, which of course we can put things in place, but nothing is guaranteed. And so it's always about doing just enough safely and then just living and experiencing life. Nutrition and exercise and supplements shouldn't be this full-time job that it is becoming for some people, and worrying about it or worrying about your weight, it's all a distraction. And I work with loads of clients in weight loss, and it's a huge distraction. Like, overeating is a coping mechanism because of emotions and difficult experiences. And of course, with the weight loss jab now, this is becoming more complex because there's an override there, but it's not worked out for many people who've come to me recently. Too many side effects, and one being anxiety and lots of gut issues and various other things. So one of the things that I've been using is the emotional allowing and the mindset education, and helping them to understand and have some compassion to themselves, because it's not through lack of willpower or greed. It's become a sense that this is where you've achieved safety because you didn't have safety, and we're kind of acting from a place earlier in our life often that we just need to acknowledge and understand. And that emotional processing, especially around meal times, and that pausing, and what if I didn't have this big slab of chocolate that I really want right now, can be so insightful and interesting. And it's really helped a number of my clients, and many of them who were getting to the point of high health risks with their weight and petrified because they couldn't stop, but they were high blood pressure, high blood glucose. What can they do about it? And we've been working on this element, and seeing big changes in biology very quick, but also them feeling a sense of relief, like, oh my God, thank God, it wasn't me. And now I've got these practices that I can work with and be easier on myself and in the routine. And that drive to walk and eat well is coming back innately without having to have someone coach you through the process. So I went all around the houses, but I just want you to know that this is going to be a very safe, honest space where I will share as much as I know about nutrition, functional medicine, exercise, that I think can be helpful especially if you're working through chronic illness and mind-body condition, if you're very confused about it all. And just generally, if you're coming here for previously you've listened to my stuff, and I'll be covering various different topics, but also speaking to the amazing teachers that helped me, including Sam Miller. I'm going to reach out to various other ones that just I know are in this space because they're so passionate about it, and not just there are some people in every industry that are just there to make a load of money and don't care about what happens to everybody. And I'll just make sure that it's only good eggs that you see on this channel. So I'd love to hear from you if you're here because you have some questions, or because you want to know a little bit more about anything, be it nutrition or, again, the mind body practices that I've been using. And if you'd like me to do any deep dives or focus topics, please just share in the comments box, and obviously there'll be more episodes to follow. But thank you for listening, and take care.